the 5 ways to get students thinking about microgravity experiment design. So here's the deal. In principle, and you obviously have to go and go through the website and ruminate on what I said, and it'll take a little time to sink in. But fundamentally, what we've done so far is we've talked about classic experiment design. We talked about how a microgravity experiment design is just a twist on classic experiment design. We have to trick the experiment if we want to understand the role of gravity in what we're studying. I've talked about the mini lab and how it works, why 75% of the experiments are biological in nature. I gave you 2 examples at a lower grade level and an undergraduate level of 2 experiments operating in the same mini lab. And so now you should have, in principle, after you go and amplify what I talked about in these videos by going to the website, you should now say, okay, I understand what a microgravity experiment is. How many of you understand what a microgravity experiment is? Raise your hands high. Okay, so I understand what a microgravity experiment is, but Jeff, now I've got a problem. Well, what's your problem? Well, I have no idea how to come up with a microgravity experiment for our team. What do I do? I understand what a microgravity experiment is, but how do I come up with a microgravity experiment for our team? How does my team do that? So let me give you 5 really solid ways to come up with a microgravity experiment. The first is everybody needs to read, and by the way, this is all detailed on the website, so trust me, I'm going to go through the navigation. Everybody needs to read the mini laboratory operations page, the mini lab operations page, because it has all of the engineering and technology constraints imposed on your science experiment. Before you even start thinking about a science experiment to be done in microgravity, you need to understand what will work in the mini lab and what will not work in the mini lab. Because if you want to send up something the size of a bowling ball, we got a problem there. It won't work in the mini lab. So the first thing to do is to understand what the mini lab can and cannot do by reading that mini lab operations page and knowing it backwards and forwards. Once you do that, then you can look around your world and say, oh, that's really cool. I wonder what the role of gravity is in that. And by the way, I know it can work in the mini lab because I read the mini lab operations manual. Got that? Does that make sense? Right? So I'll give you 2 examples. There was a middle school student who went down in her basement one day. It was damp down there, and she saw moss growing on an inside wall. She said, gee, I wonder what the role of gravity is in the life cycle of moss. That's where that experiment came from. Another young lady who was a junior in high school really loved her biology labs the year before, and her favorite was the planaria worm regeneration lab. She said, oh, I wonder if gravity plays a role in planaria worm regeneration. That's where that experiment came from. So you can look around your world and say, I wonder what the role of gravity is in that. A second way to do it is you can go online and do research on what microgravity experiments have already been done in space, and that could give you ideas for a microgravity experiment. A third way to do it is to go to the SSEP document library on the website and download the microgravity science background document that provides an overview of 9 separate science disciplines appropriate for microgravity research and why, including crystal growth and protein crystal growth. And there's an accompanying case studies document that provides examples of microgravity experiments in each of those 9 science disciplines. A fourth way you can do it is you can download from the document library the microgravity experiment samples document, which lists hundreds and hundreds of fluids and solids that are typically used in microgravity research. That could give you ideas. So the 4 ways I've talked about thus far are know the mini lab operations page and look around your world and see if there's something you'd like to put in the mini lab because you want to understand the role of gravity. So that's the first way. Second way, online research. Third way, go to the document library and read the microgravity science background document. Fourth way, go to the document library and read the microgravity experiment samples document. Lots of ideas there. But a fifth really powerful way to do it is that you can go to the website and read over 400 one-paragraph summaries of every experiment ever done through SSEP, over 400 experiment summaries. And if you want to do one of those experiments over again, you can. If you want to do an experiment a little differently, you can. If you want to do a completely new experiment that nobody's has ever done before in the history of the planet, you can do that too. It's up to you. The point, and by the way, on the website, and I'll show you this, there is a page dedicated to just undergraduate experiments. So you can go through the undergraduate experiments, the more sophisticated experiments from SSEP, and see what other undergraduates are doing at undergraduate institutions. Now, I'm telling you that there's a summary of over 400 SSEP experiments on the website, and I'm saying if you want to do an experiment over again, you can, and you're going, well, what? I can? Yeah, because the whole idea is to immerse you in an authentic research experience. But here's the deal, okay? Here's the deal. The deliverable from you to your faculty advisor is a formal proposal written against the template in the proposal guide. That proposal that you submit has to have a section that details the experiment that you're proposing. What is this experiment you're proposing for microgravity? And you have to justify it with, well, what is the essential question? Justify it in terms of research online. So justify it in terms of embedded citations in the text and a bibliography of primary references. You have a section where you have to talk about how the experiment is going to be done on orbit, how the experiment is going to be done on the ground. If you can, you should put trial data in your proposal because you have many weeks before the proposals are due to conduct potential trial experiments in test tubes of the same size. And you have a section in the proposal on analysis. How are you going to compare your flight experiment to your ground control experiment to reveal the role of gravity and see if you answered the original essential question driving your experiment? And here's the catch. You are not getting any formal proposals. There are no proposals on the website, which means that you cannot get a proposal from a one-paragraph summary of an experiment on the website. The work product, what you have to deliver, is the formal proposal. So there's no reason why you can't get ideas from a one-paragraph summary of 400 experiments, but we're not giving you any proposals. Nobody's giving you the actual proposals themselves. Does everybody understand that? Does that make sense? So those are the 5 ways that you can think about what kind of experiment you want to do. Does anybody have any questions?